Hello guys, and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video. As you can see, we are back in the space plane hangar today, constructing an SSTO that we are going to be landing on Minmus and returning. A fun little mission. I know some of you were probably expecting the Moho video where we were going to descend into the Mohole, but I was still having trouble with it, so I don't know when it's gonna come out, honestly, guys. I'm so sorry that I couldn't get it out today, but I was having some problems with it the other day. I stopped working on it, and I came back to it last night, and I was having more problems with the fuel draining, so I ended up just starting over and redesigning a new craft, but it was taking a lot of work, and I just didn't have time. I didn't get a video out yesterday. I really apologize. I broke my streak of uploading daily, which kind of sucks, but I hope I can make up for it today with this video. I really like how this video turned out. You can see we're constructing a small SSTO. You might see a few cuts in this build montage. That's because with most SSTOs, you have to sort of test them out with full of fuel and when they're empty of fuel, just to make sure the mass is right. So you'll see me moving some stuff around randomly, like, why are you doing that? It's because I tested it out and wanted to make a few modifications. So this SSTO is a little overkill, well, a lot overkill for Minmus. It could probably do the MUN, but you can see it only has one nuclear engine, so it wouldn't really have the thrust-to-weight ratio for the MUN. It definitely could do the MUN, but it would be a little hard on landing and takeoff. But we do have extra oxidizer throughout the course of this mission. We actually put a small drain valve to drain most of our extra oxidizer off, so we're not carrying it around the entire mission. And you can see me taking off a piece and putting on a different fuel tank. That's one of the cuts there. So we do have extra oxidizer, so we could use that for landing and takeoff, but really we didn't need it. So we are going to Minmus. Not a big mission, just planting a flag and returning. There are a couple less than efficient burns in this, but I'll tell you when those occur. So here we are on the runway, and we'll fire up those engines and taking off. I really like the design of this. It has a little hump on the back. You can see that nuclear engine there, which, it's not too pretty, but I think it looks alright, and I do like the design. I also like the drop-down pylons with those Rapier engines on the side, and this SSTO has a very good thrust-to-weight ratio, so not a big problem taking off, and we don't even have to fly flat. We can sort of angle up to between 10 and 20 degrees right off the bat, and we'll still get to a decent speed. So I'll go ahead and give some pointers here. When you're flying SSTOs, most SSTOs, you want to stay at a level flight for the first little bit of your ascent, and stay roughly 1,000 to 2,000 meters off the ground until you get above 450 to 500 meters per second, because after that speed, the Rapier, its thrust is greatly increased, and you should, realistically, by the time you're hitting 20 kilometers, which is when you have to switch to the closed cycle mode of the Rapiers, which is much less efficient than either the nuclear engines or the air-breathing mode of the Rapiers, you should have around 1,200 meters per second, plus or minus around 100 meters per second of speed built up before you switch to either the closed cycle or the nuclear engine. We probably didn't need any oxidizer in this mission. I probably could have circularized with just the nuclear, but we wanted to play it safe, so we do have some oxidizer on board. And you can see we're circularizing with that nuclear engine. We did go for a relatively high orbit. I think we were like 125,000 meters off the ground, which it's unnecessary, but with nuclear engines you want a higher apoapsis, just so you have a longer time to circularize, just so you don't risk re-entering the atmosphere. So you can see we have that RCS thruster on the front. Unfortunately, with this mission, it's a little annoying. It tends to tip down when you're going in time warp. A lot of SSTOs do this, so I couldn't do any burns past 2, and if I really wanted to risk it, and it wasn't that necessary to be an efficient burn, then I'd do 3 times time warp. But I couldn't really do much faster than that, unfortunately. Although I think I do have a better time warp on, so that might be more like 6 and 12 times time warp. Either way, you can see me getting a maneuver node here with Minmus. If you want to get a decent Minmus encounter, I recommend burning at your ascending or descending node, so you don't have to do too many normal or anti-normal burns mid-course. So we're just going to burn prograde at around 900 meters per second burn. It's going to be a little less efficient than that because, of course, we have to split our burn up between halfway through the maneuver node, so we're burning the most efficiently, really. Don't do your inclination change when you're in a low carbon orbit. Do it when you're halfway to Minmus, because the ascending and descending nodes, when they're closer to a large body, they're less efficient, and so it's most efficient to do your anti-normal and normal burns as far from any large mass as possible, like Kerbin. So we're going to do that halfway on our course to Minmus, just so that we can do those as efficiently as possible. So we're burning towards Minmus here. We had to do quite a few burns at Periaps to do this. Actually, I think we just did the large one. I think we burned at Periaps coming back, though. So it was less than efficient, but it's alright, and because we had such a high starting orbit, it wasn't a problem, and we could definitely risk doing a longer burn without risking re-entering the atmosphere. But this is a little over 900 meter per second burn, and then we'll do a correction burn when we're halfway to Minmus to get our prograde and retrograde orbit lined up so we can get a perfect encounter, and then also we'll do our anti-normal and normal burns. So we'll time warp here, and there we go, raising that periaps, or apoapsis rather, all the way up and getting a decent encounter with Minmus. You can see we're focusing view on Minmus here, and we're just going to adjust our inclination, so we're hitting an equatorial orbit of Minmus, and just getting it nice and close there. I would recommend anything about 10 to 15 kilometers up from the surface of Minmus is a good periaps to aim for, because you don't want to risk hitting the mountains of Minmus. I say that in most of my videos. Here's the inclination change maneuver node there, just finishing that off, and we have a decent encounter. I do end up accidentally burning, and so I have to burn radial out when I'm actually at Minmus, which is a little unfortunate. It was less than efficient, but it's not a big deal. You can see we're actually on a impact course with Minmus, so I have to burn radial out very quickly so we don't slam into the side of Minmus. And I lost the reaction control wheel capabilities there, and I realized I was out of electricity, so I just had to deploy those solar panels. And you can see we're coming in on a polar orbit. I think I accidentally fired my nuclear thrusters and didn't realize it, or at nuclear engines rather. So we are getting into a nice equatorial orbit there, just burning radial out, and there we go. Nice low periaps around Minmus, and we can plot that circularization maneuver node there and come in to land on Minmus. It's a pretty simple mission. I think Minmus is a great location for SSTOs, especially if you're beginning to just learn them. You can throw some wings, some rapiers, and some nuclear engines on, and just it's a nice, small, easy to get to, low delta V location to land your SSTOs on. It's very forgiving in terms of delta V amount, and you can land at relatively high speeds without risking blowing up or breaking anything. So crash landing is not a super big deal on Minmus. So we're burning retrograde there and just lowering our periaps into the surface of Minmus. You can see I have a mod, Kerbal Engineer Redux, that gives me those readouts at the top there. I have a suicide burn countdown that gives me a rough count on where I'm should start my burn to impact to slow my burn at just the right time to get an efficient landing burn for Minmus. I think we do end up firing our rapiers once with the XX oxidizer and then landing, and here we are. And I see this little rock over here from the Breaking Ground DLC, so we're just going to park right over the rock, and I think we'll plant a flag on that. So while Valentina is getting out and planting that flag on the rock, I just wanted to touch on something. I didn't upload yesterday, really apologize for that, but just didn't have the time, and so we broke our little daily upload. So I think I'll go from a daily upload schedule to a daily upload as much as I can schedule, and then just, when I can't, sorry, I just, can't make KSP every day. I can only make it most days. So as much as I love KSP, I can't, sometimes I just, want to do other things and live my life. So I think I retract the landing gear a little too early and then have to deploy it again here, just so I don't accidentally impact the surface of Minmus. And you can see we're pointing at a very sharp angle right off, just so we can raise our apoapsis a little bit, and then we'll level off because Minmus doesn't have an atmosphere, so it's not really a big deal to level off at a low altitude. We'll have a little close call up at those mountain ranges over there, but we don't really come too close. So you can see I actually went into a polar orbit of Minmus. We are leaving Minmus. We didn't even circularize around Minmus. We could have gone and launched directly from the surface of Minmus into a equatorial orbit, but I just wanted to get off, so I sort of just pointed a direction and went. So we're actually doing one of the least efficient Minmus burns to leave Minmus's sphere of influence that you could do, but it's not a big deal. As I said, this craft has a hugely overkill delta V amount, so we're just lowering that periaps, and we could aerobrake to save delta V, but I wanted to circularize at Minmus just so we could get a very accurate landing at the KSC. So we will circularize, and we'll also do a anti-normal and normal burn at our ascending node to get a equatorial, because you can see we're at a slight inclination, an equatorial orbit of Kerbin, so we can get a perfect landing at the KSC. I did touch on KSC landings in my shuttle video yesterday, but if you didn't see that, you can just watch this one and learn how to land at the KSC. Although I would recommend you watch the shuttle video. I think it was pretty nice. It's only short, it's like 5 minutes, and we just deployed some satellites that we actually used to get our equatorial orbit in this video. We set it as target so we could burn anti-normal and normal, and we're actually doing that burn now, to get an equatorial orbit of Kerbin. So it's pretty equatorial. It's not perfect, could be better, but it's not a super big deal. So you can see there we're plotting our circularization maneuver node there, just to circularize around Kerbin and get a very accurate landing at the KSC. And we do actually do a couple berms at periaps. It is most efficient to do a prograde and retrograde burns at periaps. So we are burning at periaps, and then we will fly up, do another orbit, and burn at periaps again, just to, over the course of a few orbits, lower our periaps to around 130-something kilometers, and so we can do a decent landing at the KSC with that. So, this mission isn't super complicated, but I think it's a good introduction if you have never flown SSTOs before and don't just want to go do the standard, LKO orbit SSTO, because those are pretty easy to build. You don't even need nuclear engines for those. So I think Minmus is pretty much the best early location to build SSTOs to, or just the best early location to land on, period. Just because it has such a low delta V requirement, low surface gravity, so it's a really great location to practice on your landings on. So here we are, we're lowering, and I think we do one more orbit around Kerbin to lower it that last final bit into around 130 kilometer orbit before we do a quick deorbit burn to finally land at the KSC as a short little mission for today. So there we are, we've circularized at Kerbin, and I wanted to land at the KSC when it was on the light side, so we're just time warping around until we see it, and it's on the light side. So I would recommend around a quarter to a fifth of the orbit, not quite a fifth might be cutting it a little close, of your orbit. You want to start your retrograde burn to deorbit around a quarter before of the circumference of Kerbin, of your orbit, just to burn retrograde and lower your orbit. I would recommend to just off the coast of the Kerbal Space Center. I think that's a good little tidbit. If you're trying to land at the Kerbal Space Center, and you can see me making a quick save there, if you're trying to land at the Kerbal Space Center, with something like a rocket, you do definitely want to extend that further out, because you're going to create more drag. But with a plane or SSTO that can glide, you want to have a relatively close parry up. So you can see we're gliding here, and if I didn't time warp, I wouldn't have tumbled so much there, but I was getting a little impatient and time warping. So you can see there, and we're firing up those rapiers on air breathing mode. We could have glided if I reloaded another quick save, but you know, I figured, hey, we have a little excess fuel, we might as well burn it off, so it looks like I'm cutting the margins on this mission super close, even though I've done a couple very inefficient burns. So we're out of all liquid fuel and oxidizer, but it's not a big deal. We have plenty of speed to just glide the rest of the way to the KSC, coming in at like 50 to 60 meters per second, turning at the last minute, lowering those landing gears so we create very little drag, no drug chutes or air brakes needed, and brake, and there we have landed. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave suggestions where you want me to go in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Later, guys.